Chapter 2, 7 on the Road. Jenny sat in the back seat of the car between Newt and Cricket, who wanted to sit on the outside. Clip sat on the far side near the door to get the best view of the scenery. Rank and favor were, as usual, determined by age. The three oldest sat in the front seat as they left for a new home. It was just as well, for soon the two youngest of the children were fast asleep. The car careened through the deep morning fog, which lifted on the hillsides and became more dense in the lowlands. Daylight blazoned forth, and sleepyheads looked out on sights that would set a chill for even the bravest of travelers. At the side of the road were deep drop-offs below, which swayed the top of tall trees. The narrow, winding road coursed past wooded intersections where meeting anyone was hazardous. At one point, the family stopped to help a woman who had been grazed by a hunter's bullet. Ozark roads, developed from footpaths, horse trails, and wagon routes, were not at all suited for use by motor cars. Sometimes they coursed the winding top of a plateau from which the whole world seemed to open up, and revealing a wide view of hills and valleys rising and falling far in the distance. A blue haze found in few places in the world enshrouded the hills in a hazy, ghost-like unreality. Many a frontiersman lured from this urge to journey to the far west was held captive by the beauty of the Missouri Ozarks and stayed to make a permanent home there. Dad tried to conquer one especially steep hill, but instead found the car rolling backwards. He used a remedy he had learned by watching other drivers. He continued to roll downhill, then backed halfway up the preceding hill. With the help of gravity, he descended at full speed and with an open throttle went over the next crest. The immediate objective of the trip was to go through Marshfield and make a stop at the home of an uncle before going to Spring Hill, Kansas. Dad had been feeling ill, and when he came in sight of Uncle Vernon's house, he pulled off the road and stopped in front of the old vacant barn. He staggered out of the car, went inside, and half fell down the pile of straw on the barn floor. Leela ran to get him a quilt and a pillow from the car, and she rushed the children off to telephone for a doctor from Uncle Vernon's house. Within minutes, the children returned with their uncle to find Dad rolling around in the bed of straw. He had become delirious and was shaking from violent chills. It was not long before Doc Bailey arrived, driving a horse and buggy, his speed hastened by the fact that his farm was only a short distance away. After he examined Dad, his sadness belied his well-known St. Nick joviality. "I think he has smallpox," he said slowly, turning over the thought in his mind. "Of course, I can't be sure." Looking at Jenny's puzzled expression, he added, "Old Bailey is going to have to keep you prisoner for a while right here in this old barn. That means you can't go visit anyone, and nobody can come visit you. That's to keep this from spreading." With that explanation, he went to search out his buggy and returned with a long cardboard sign which he nailed over the barn door. In big, bold letters, it read, "Quarantine." Under this fearful sign, a miracle happened. Food, clothing, water, quilts, and bedding were found lying before the barn door. There was no one to be seen. It did not take the children long to discover, by watching very carefully, the neighbors would quickly approach the barn, leave their offering, and just as quickly disappear again. Uncle Vernon brought cans of water, and as soon as the food was eaten, the children rinsed out the containers and put them again in front of the barn door. Bakery-made light breads were sometimes left for them, an especially delightful rare treat. Under any circumstances, they almost never got light bread. A feather tick made from homegrown chickens was left as a gift for Dad, but the children continued to sleep on straw spread on the ground. During the day, the children played outside, careful not to go near other people. After several days, the doctor concluded that the illness had been chicken pox. That somehow, even with so many children, Dad had escaped getting the disease earlier in life at a time when it would not have been so difficult for him. Plans to continue their journey were underway, and only a few of the clothes and toys could be taken along. Other gifts were left with their uncle. Their trip was broken by overnight stays at roadside cabins and inns. Some had high, glossy, shiny floors, good for skating. This attractive feature did not escape the younger children, who were soon thundering down long, slick halls with only their shoe soles for skates. Small wonder when Ozark homes had rough-hewn wood floors, or even less inviting dirt floors with lumps and hollows dug out by a broom. "Now watch me," Jenny cried, as she started out on a long skate. But her shoe gripped the floor, and she was thrown head first out the window at the end of the hall. As she flew past, Newt grabbed her feet and lifted her safely back into the room, past the window's jagged glass. She had crashed through the window pane, and there was not a scratch on her. Quite bewildered, hardly realizing what had happened, she stood looking down at the ground below at the shiny broken glass, where she would have been if Newt hadn't grabbed her feet. "Now watch me, Billy Goat," Clip teased, mimicking a weak little girl voice. Ever quick with a nickname, he had instantly given her one that would last for years. She didn't object. It was kind of distinct, and a reminder to her of an outlandish act, one that could have claimed her life. Even the humorous Clip thought up a prank, which he planned to execute at the next cabin where they stayed for the night. He smiled to himself all day as he rode along, enjoying the scenery, but told no one what he had planned to do. That night the whole family was asleep, all except Clip. Little Newt was twitching from a dream, his long, stockinged feet sticking out from under the sheet. Clip gently pulled on the toes of the stockings until he got a sizable length. Then he tied the toes together. He went to sleep with a satisfied grin on his face. He awoke to an uproar. "Hey, what you doing? What you doing there? Get up!" Everybody was yelling in a jumble of words. Newt had tumbled out of bed on his way to the bathroom, falling head over heels over everybody, those on the bed and those asleep in the floor. He was still half asleep when Clip said he just fell over his socks and untied them in the dark. But the family were up early the next morning to continue their journey over the endless vacant flatlands of Kansas. Newt revived a game of who can count the highest, and Clip started a short-lived game of who can sing the loudest. Dad won that game. Their hunger was quieted by stops at the grocery stores where Dad bought his favorite: bologna, crackers, peanut butter, and a can of pineapples and peaches. Late one evening, they came to a small town of big yards and roomy white framed houses. As the sun went down, Dad drove into a lane that led to their new home. A small house they later named the Crazy House, because it was shaped like a mental institution, or so Clip said.